What's up, everybody? Jeff here, and I am freaking exhausted. That's because I just got back from Gen Con this week, and honestly, I had a blast. For those of you that don't know what Gen Con is, it's one of the biggest gaming conventions, and it takes place in Indianapolis every year around this time of year. Now, obviously, depending on where you live, it may be really difficult for you to get to Indianapolis, but if you've ever thought about coming and it's at all feasible, then I highly recommend that you make the trip as soon as you can. It's a really great opportunity to meet people from the communities that you're involved in, potentially meet some of the developers and the designers behind the games that you like, and for you to discover brand new games that you didn't know that you like until you show up at the con and get to do a demo. Now, I'm obviously very involved in the weird community, so I actually did some volunteering doing demos for some of their games. But before we get to that, let me just give you a broader overview of how the convention works. So the convention center is in downtown Indianapolis, and it's a huge building. But more or less, it's divided up into two different areas. One is the vendor hall, and this is the area where everybody's selling merchandise. Now, some companies will also give you a quick demo there, and they have some tables and models set up, but for the most part, this is just where you go shopping. Now, if you're curious about what Weird's booth looks like there, I actually just posted a short the other day that gives you a quick walkthrough of the whole booth. It's a pretty good size, and it's chock full of all sorts of weird products, which is really cool. They also have a table set up to show off Vagrant Song. And of course, they have the display cabinets that have all of the really gorgeous, well-painted miniatures, and some little secrets. They usually like to sneak a handful of models into the display cases that we don't know what they are and we've never seen before. And this year was no exception. We got to look at this guy, who is probably part of the second box for the Frankenstein set that was shown off a couple weeks back, as well as this Headless Horseman, a new Nephilim-looking character, this gremlin riding a frog, this construct that looks like alternate art for the Rail Golem, a Plague Picker, which is something that we actually know of from Through the Breach, and a whole bunch of other stuff, some of which we have some good theories about what they might be, and some of which we're pretty much clueless. Like this Sword Lady. If you want to check out all these pictures and you like speculating about what they may or may not be, then definitely head over to the Discord, because we do that kind of stuff all the time. And as soon as I posted these pictures to the Discord, we had a whole bunch of people who were scrambling to try to figure out what they might be. So shout out to everybody that hangs out in the Discord, and thanks a lot for being a great part of the community. Now, I got a chance to check out a whole bunch of other booths while I was there, but there's a few in particular that I want to call out. The first one is the Corvus Belli booth. Now, it was so busy over there that I didn't actually get a chance to do a full 360 of the whole booth, but they had a bunch of really cool tables set up, and one of them had this Rex spaceship on it, which was amazing. Now, it wasn't labeled with any particular company, and I couldn't figure out if this was a product that anybody sells or if this was like a custom table that they had made. And the weird thing is, it doesn't really look like an infinity table. I don't think this would play particularly well, but it was really awesome. And if anybody knows anything about this, then let me know. Drop a comment below. They were also showing off two of their new games. One was called Rem Racers, which is a little board game about racing around remotes. I think it looks really cool. Remotes are one of my favorite things about Infinity because robots are awesome. And the other thing they were showing is their new game, Warcrow. So if you're not familiar with this, they actually kickstarted a dungeon crawler, which is set in this universe, last year. So that's going to be coming in the relatively near future. But after that, they're actually going to be doing a war game in the same universe, and that's what they were showing off for the first time at Gen Con. Now, I didn't actually have an opportunity to take a full demo, but I did get a chance to take a look at the miniatures and listen in on a little bit of a demo that was going on, and the game looks really awesome. This might come as a surprise to some of you, but I'm actually not a huge fan of fantasy, especially the very generic, typical-looking fantasy, because I find it a little bit too samey, and it doesn't really get me that excited. But this universe actually seems really cool. In particular, a lot of the designs of the models are really unique and interesting looking. Somebody actually mentioned to me at the con that the orcs actually look a little bit like Warcraft orcs, which I hadn't really considered before, but I guess they sort of do. But overall, a lot of the aesthetic of some of this stuff isn't exactly like a lot of the typical fantasy that you might be used to seeing. The designs are really unique, and a lot of the characters look really interesting. And I know a little bit about the world, and it seems like they've incorporated a lot of really cool ideas into it. So I had a quick chat with one of the designers, and I'm hoping to actually get them on for an interview to talk a little bit more about the lore and the backstory. Now, there was a ton of other booths that I looked at, but a couple more that I want to just call out really quickly. Firelog Games is a company that makes historical miniatures games, and in particularly, they make a game called Blood and Plunder that I'm a big fan of. It's a game that's mostly about pirates and like 17th and 18th century combat, but you can also play Native Americans, which I think is really awesome. And I've actually been playing almost as much of that as I've been playing Malifaux in the last couple of months. So I went over and had a chat with the guys, and they were really friendly and forthcoming with information. I actually took a demo of their World War I game called Blood and Valor, and it was a ton of fun, so I picked up the expansion book and actually got the designers to sign it for me. This expansion incorporates pretty much any faction you can imagine from that time period. So if you've ever been interested in historical games and you're interested in that time period, then that's definitely one for you to check out. The next one I thought was really cool was a game called Mythic Earth. Now, there was a game called Mythic Americas that was put out by Warlord, and if I understand this correctly, the designers of that game actually sort of split it off from Warlord and then developed their own rule system. It uses a lot of the same miniatures, but it's a separate thing, and now they're kind of going off on their own and developing this out further. The whole idea of this game is that they look at native cultures and then design the game and the backstory around their myths and legends from those cultures. It's a really cool idea, and so far they've focused mostly on the Americas, so you have things like the Inuits, the Mayas, the Aztecs, the Incas, things like that. But they also include mythical creatures, so it's not just people fighting, it's all sorts of animals as well as monsters and even gods. I've always really liked how Weird will pull from mythology that's not just the traditional European mythology that we're all used to seeing in fantasy games. They pull from South African mythology, Eastern mythology, North American native mythology, all sorts of different stuff. And this game is kind of like that, but that's the whole focus, which I think is really cool. These are the types of cultures that you don't see get focused on in a lot of games, and honestly, even though it's something I'm particularly interested in, I don't really know a whole bunch about it because we're just not exposed to it as much as a lot of the other stuff. And as someone with Hispanic heritage and native relatives through marriage, it's really cool to see these cultures get a spotlight. Now, they're planning to put out a new faction pretty soon, which is the Taínos, which is basically a group of natives that lived in the Caribbean before the European conquerors came over. But after that, they're actually planning to move to Polynesian cultures and eventually do ancient Asian cultures as well as African cultures, which is all really cool and exciting. They said that by the end, they're actually going to eventually get to Europe, but instead of doing the things that you might expect them to do, they're actually going to pull from cultures that, again, are much less commonly seen in games like this. In particular, they said they're going to focus on Eastern Europe. I always want to learn more about mythology and the different stories from these cultures, so I'm really looking forward to where this game's going, and I actually have some of the models from when it was with Warlord, so I'm definitely going to be checking that game out. Their rules are free on the website, and I'll put a link in the description. Now, the last one is a game that I'm currently obsessed with, and I'm going to keep this brief because I'm planning to do a whole video about this game. When I was at the con, I was hanging out, and suddenly Doug from the Danger Planet came up to me with a huge grin on his face, and he was like, "You have to check out this game." And at first I was like, oh, there's so many games. I really don't need any new games to have to worry about playing. But he was 100% right. I really did need to check out this game. The game is called Zinvaded, and they have this teeny little booth in the back of Gen Con that I probably walked past 2 or 3 times before he told me about it and didn't even notice. And the premise of this game is that some alien insects from another planet were looking for a new planet to invade, and they sent a probe to Earth. The probe crashed on a wargaming table, and they took some still pictures of the wargaming figures thinking that those were the Earthlings. So they said, hey, these people are primitive, and they're the same size as us, so let's go to Earth, and we're going to take over. And then they got here and realized, oh crap, these people are much bigger than us. So the game is actually played in 1-to-1 scale, which means you play on a table that is just full of the random stuff that you have laying around on an office table or a kitchen table or wherever else you want to play in your house. You can play with cups, utensils, notebooks, paint pots, whatever you have laying around. It's just like how you would have played a war game when you were a kid and couldn't afford really nice terrain, but this is actually how you're supposed to play the game. I'm not going to go into any more detail than that for now, but it's a game that everybody should definitely check out, and keep an eye out on the channel because I'm definitely going to put out another video that's all about that game because I'm really excited about it. It's so cool. Now, all of that was only a small fraction of what I did while I was at Gen Con because the real action actually takes place in the event hall. Now, the event hall is basically just tables that go on for days and days and days where people are playing games. This is where they have the tournaments, they have special events, and you can schedule or in some cases walk up and have a demo of all sorts of different game systems. This is where I spent most of my time volunteering for Weird, and I was able to put on a whole bunch of demos for Malifaux, but in particular, I actually signed up for a bunch of events for the other side. Now, the Malifaux demo is really cool because most of the people I was demoing Malifaux for were people who played other game systems and always heard about Malifaux but had never tried it before and they wanted to give it a go. And it seems like everybody took to it really quickly, which probably won't surprise anybody who plays Malifaux. But on top of that, I did a couple of demos for the other side, which is really exciting because my hype for that game has been building ever since we found out that the new stuff was coming. The first thing I did when I got to the con was run over and grab the new TOS book so that I could rip it open and go through some of the new stuff that we're getting. And it's super exciting. All the pictures are up on Discord. If you look hard enough, you can find them. But suffice it to say, the new factions look awesome, and they seem like they're going to be really interesting in the game. I did a few demos for people who were pretty new to the game, and I was surprised at how quickly they picked it up, because there's a lot of resource management in the game, and some of it can be a little bit complicated for new people to get a hold of. But everybody seemed to take to it pretty easily. In addition to that, I put on an event for Titan Smash, which is the version of the game where everybody picks up a Titan, and then they all just beat each other up in the middle of the board. It's actually a ton of fun because there's a little more to it than that. There's objectives that you have to try to stay near and your opponents can throw you away from them. But it's a really interesting game to actually learn some of the basic mechanics. So if you've never played the other side before and you're curious and you happen to have some Titans, then that might be a good way to actually get your foot in the door. The last demo I did for the other side was a new game type that they're actually working on right now called Against the Odds. I was super excited to hear that they're actually actively developing for this game still, and the new game type actually looks really awesome. It's still not completely finalized, but the version that we played, you basically have 3 players on one side who pick from the Earthside factions, and they basically get a small force and have to hold out for a certain period of time while a larger army of the Gibbering Hordes comes and tries to kill them all. It was a ton of fun, and I was on the Defender side, and we actually managed to get unreasonably good card draw at the beginning of the first turn, which allowed us to do some of the objectives and basically cut down on the time that we needed to survive. So we ended up pulling it out, but I'm not sure we would have been able to if it weren't for that crazy card draw on turn 1. I think we drew 8 cards and got 3 13s and the red joker. Really wild. I'm looking forward to trying that game type out more once they put out the official rules for it. And I'm super excited to play more TOS, so if you're interested in the game and you've never played before, then check out the video I did a couple weeks ago for people who have the starter box from last year, but potentially bought it just to play Malifaux with it, and the video will explain to you how you can actually use that to play the other side pretty easily. You already have everything you need, so why not give it a shot? And if you're interested in having a quick run through of the rules, there's a bunch of people on my Discord who have expressed some interest, so I might put together a little tutorial to kind of run everybody through it on Vassal. So if you're interested in that, then join the Discord and shoot me a message and let me know. I also got to watch a little bit of the Malifaux tournament that was going on, and I was very excited to get to see a little bit of the Bonanza Brawl event that was happening. I actually wanted to participate in the Bonanza Brawl event, but unfortunately I'd already scheduled something else. But I did get a deck of the Bonanza Brawl cards, so I'm looking forward to finally actually getting to try the game in real life. Oh, and shout out to the Steam Powered Scoundrels who I finally got to meet in Meat Space. Now, there's a whole bunch more stuff that happened at Gen Con, and I can't get into every single thing, but I got a chance to talk to some of the Infinity players because they were on the tables just one over from us. And they actually had some really gorgeous tables set up for Infinity. It's actually one of my favorite things about that game is the way the tables look. Super thematic, and they're really interesting terrain that gets used in that game. They even had this Bayou table set up that I was like, you could just play Malifaux and Infinity and go back and forth on this table. So that was really cool. But by far the highlight of the whole week was that I got to hang out with a whole bunch of people on the team at Weird and talk to them about what they're working on, what they're excited about, and basically let them know how much I love all the stuff that they do. And on top of that, I got to meet a whole bunch of people from the community, folks who I'd interacted with before online, but I'd never met in person, and a bunch of people who just came up to say that they liked the channel. So shout outs to all those people, and thanks a lot for coming and saying hi. I really appreciate it. Coming back from Gen Con got me super excited to put out a whole bunch more videos, and I have a lot of exciting stuff planned for the near future based on some of the conversations that I was having while I was there. So if you're excited for that, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the upcoming stuff. And if you want to support the channel more, then you can check out the links in the description for the merch store, the Weird affiliate link where you can make purchases through their web store and it goes to support the channel, and the Patreon where we have a whole bunch of different reward tiers, and it could have gotten you 2 entries into the giveaway that was going on for the past month. And speaking of the giveaway, I think it's about time that we picked a winner for the Maxine box. So the random number generator has chosen Qformer, who says, I just started Malifaux with Cooper and was looking to get Jedza before the Nightmare Edition was announced. Looks like I'll be getting 2 versions of the crew because all of them are fire. Well, I couldn't have said it better myself because that Nightmare box is awesome and I definitely picked one up for me. But now you're going to have a Maxine box to go along with the whole Explorer Society crew. So make sure you shoot me an email from your YouTube email address to this address and send me your shipping information so I can get that sent out to you. And for everybody who didn't win, keep an eye out on the channel because I'm going to be doing more giveaways in the near future. It's not going to be almost a year between the giveaways like it was last time. But that's all I got for you right now. Lots of exciting stuff coming up, including I'm apparently doing a Nightmare Box tier list because I was called out publicly on the internet by a bully. So that's coming too. But in the meantime, huge thanks to all of my patrons, especially the Extremely Cool Kids tier, the Steam Powered Scoundrels, Dogmatize, and Biclops Gladiator Games. Thanks for watching.